So if you work on older Trane units that have ReliaTel, you're going to want to watch this one. This is important. Right here, we have a Trane Precedent. The problem this unit's having is that it thinks it's a heat pump. Now, don't be confused that we have a three-way valve there. That's because this unit has dehumidification. Okay, there's a reheat coil in here that allows this unit to go into dehumidification. Okay, it is not a heat pump. But I'm getting a diagnostic on this RTRM board that is a coil number 2 temp sensor fail. Okay, there is no coil 2 temp sensor, and it's not a heat pump. And if you know that the way that Trane units figure out their configuration, it has to do with what boards are connected to the RTRM, right? The RTRM stands for Rooftop Refrigeration Module. It's basically the aggregator of everything that's in this unit. So in here, we have an LCIR, which is a LAN Talk Communication Interface ReliaTel. We also have what's called an RTOM, which is a Rooftop Options Module. There's also an ECA, which is an Economizer Communication Module, and the Ignition Module is also part of that intermodule communication. You can see it here. When they are all plugged in, they are all plugged into this IMC link, or intermodule communication. It's basically Modbus. They are all connected to each other. The twisted pair, power, ground, and then the communication. So when you power up a Trane unit, the RTRM does like a whois command, and it sees what boards are connected onto this link. They then report what they are, okay? So this RTOM will say that it has dehumidification function, or if it was a heat pump, the LAN Talk communication lets it know that, hey, this is on a BMS system, so look for incoming BMS commands, and that it has an economizer, that you have a economizer mode as an option within the unit. So now, since this unit thinks it's a heat pump and it's having some sensor failure, troubleshooting it, we came up with a few things. Now, the first thing, if you know Trane units well, you know this purple plug right here, this purple splice. This here, if you look on the diagram, will dictate if it's a heat pump or not. If you just have an RTRM board and no other boards, this here will tell the unit in its configuration that it is a heat pump. I'll show you on the diagram here so you can see what I mean. Here's the diagram for the RTRM, and if you look right here, this here says configuration. You have the configuration common, which just sends voltage out. If it gets voltage in on 4, it's telling the RTRM that it is a 1 compressor configuration. And if that power comes in on 5, it is a non-heat pump configuration. So if you had an RTRM and it was a heat pump, you would cut this wire here and just leave this spliced. This wire would hang and get a wire nut. That there is how you would make it a heat pump. You also see a note here, 13. And it does say down here, cut and isolate wire 124B if dehumidification is installed for additional wiring, see, blah, 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 blah. All right, so we actually do have this wire off. Now, that's probably why it's thinking it's a heat pump, because when you have an RTRM and maybe no RTOM, since it's not seeing the RTOM properly, this wire being cut is making it think it's a heat pump. Now, what's happening is that the unit's overcooling because it's trying to go into heating mode. It thinks it's a heat pump, so guess what? It's running the compressor. It thinks that it's running the compressor, and it's got the reversing valve energized, and it's sending hot gas into the indoor coil, which is not happening. It's just overcooling the space. Turns out that we actually have a bad RTOM. The RTOM is taking down the configuration. The RTOM is the suspect. But now here's another problem. All right, this is a version 9 RTOM. This here is a version 14 RTRM. Now, if you have a unit that has an RTRM that is older than version 19, okay, so version 14 is older. Anything under 19 is kind of like a cusp of where you have to replace the RTRM if you replace any of these boards. So if you have a bad RTOM, you need to replace the RTRM with it, and that's as per Trane. That if you have anything under 19, you have to replace the RTRM when you replace any of the other boards that it might have. Okay, here's my new boards. We have our new RTRM, which is version 23, and then we have the RTOM, which is version 10. So this is one version, or a few versions above this guy. So if I were to take that 10 and put it in here, most likely the unit would come on, but it could have glitches and could have issues. All right, so right now I'm going to replace these boards, and then we're going to see how it goes to its normal operation, and it'll allow the gas heat to function. So here's another good tip. If you have a communication card here, like this LCI or a BCI for BACnet that's red, or a TCI, which has the little triangle daughter board on it, and you need to run this unit in standalone or run it off of a thermostat, what you can do is you can simply turn the power off to the unit, come to this unit here, And you see this 5-pin one right here. All you do is you take this one off of here and then remove this one here from the RTRM and then just plug this in like this. Now what you just did is you took this jumper wire that's going from here to the LCI and you just took it off and took the one that was on here and put it on here. So right now you power this unit back up, it will think it is not part of a BMS because like I said, when the unit powers on, the RTRM does a who is and sees what type of boards are hooked up to this. And it'll allow you to, put it in test mode, run it through a thermostat, however you want to do it. That's a good tip to have because that happens sometimes. And even if you just want to test something, if it's on a BMS and you don't want to trigger alarms or something, you can do this too. It's the 5-pin. There's actually two. This 5-pin is missing one, and then this one here is a 4-pin. Same wires, it's just that's how they do it, but it's the same thing. All right, so now we're going to take this guy back off. We're going to put the right one on, which is the intermodule communication coming over to here, and then this guy is here. So now this communication's back on, and everything should be good. When we power this bad boy up, it's now going to do a who is. It's going to see what's connected. It's going to see the LCI. It's going to see the ignition module. It's going to see the RTOM, and it's going to see the ECA economizer module. And then now our gas heat should function, and our unit should show the proper configuration of DX cooling, gas heat, economizer, dehumidification package. Let's check it out. Let me button this bad boy up. And here's our RTOM, and you can clearly see the problem. Right there. Right there. Corrosion right there. There. So all that corrosion is what was causing this bad boy to take this unit down. And we got our new RTRM in place and our new RTOM in place. And it's kind of silly. Look how they do these plugs. Like, it's very easy if you don't put it in the right spot to have a problem. There's another one over on this side right there. But there we go. Now, since this is part of a BMS, it's not using any of these potentiometer set points on here. So, but you always check just to make sure. So since this RTRM is still good, I'm going to keep it here on site as a backup in case of emergency. So whenever I do take a part out, if I was going to keep it for my truck or if I'm leaving it for a customer, I'll make sure to put, obviously I keep the customer's name on it, that it's used, that it's okay, and what version it is. And now I'll leave this here in their mechanical room because up here they do have, 14 units that potentially could use this board if needed. So it's good to get you out of a jam. Another good thing about upgrading the RTRM to a version 20 and above is it gives you this J10 pin. This J10 pin allows me to use my TD5 display. I have my own TD5 and I also have a TD7, which is used for UC600s that are on like air handlers and chillers. But this here is great. If you work on a lot of older Trane units like this, some of them actually come with this display. It's actually an option. If not, and if you don't have a BMS, you're kind of stuck to measuring the DC voltage there on the J6 pin to get your diagnostic to see what the unit's doing. This display here will allow you to get all the data that's in this unit and be able to see what it's actually doing once it loads up. But now, hey, we can see the unit is actually configured as a constant volume. Supply fan on, active mode is cool, supply fan 100%, remote set point source because it is part of a BMS, no active heating stages, no active cooling stages, and now we can kind of see what the unit's doing. If we go into reports, we can make a custom report, we can see system report, compressor, operating mode, economizer, about, sensor report. Let's do system report. That's kind of what we just saw. There's 6 pages here. Active space temp, set point, outdoor damper position, space temp. We're seeing the RTOM, which is good. And then it shows you the thermostat inputs if we were using a thermostat, which we are not. Operating modes, you can see, we're just in supply fan occupied. We're just like in recirc. Here we go. We can see our RTRM version, our RTOM, our economizer module, or the RTEM. Here's the display, the BAS software, which is in there. We could also see if we have any alarms. We could also reset an alarm if we had it. But this little display is pretty handy. You can back up the unit, check your set points. You can change set points from here. Right now it's just display only mode because we have a BMS hooked up. Like I said, if you work on a lot of Trane units, maybe think about picking one of these up or have your company pick one up, because if you're having a problematic Trane unit that has no BMS, you hook up, you'll get a lot of information. They're about $800. They are a little pricey, I think well worth it. You can also order these units, they'll come mounted in the machine like this. This is the Trane TD5 display. And it also has graphs here, and you can pick which one you want to look at. Right now, like I said, if we look at space temp, I only just plugged it in. This is a new RTRM, so we're not going to have much data. So it's got some time. It goes all the way back to the 1st, so at least a week's worth of data. You can look to see if you had a problem, if you had any spikes, any troughs, anything like that. Again, these units are kind of going out. They're aging out. There's still thousands of these out there. Now that I have the unit back online, boards replaced, I have to go into the BMS because we have points overridden. So if I go into unit number 11, so I have to go into the unit here. We have an override in place because since the unit was going into heating, but yet thought it was a heat pump, it was actually cooling. What we did is we overrode the heat cool mode request to cooling. Now I'm going to go in there, I'm going to release that. That just meant that the unit is not going to try to go into any other mode because it can't, because I have a hard override since March 25th. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to release this. Now it's going back, now it's in auto. And if we go back to the graphic, it's probably going to stay in cool. Actually, no, it actually should trick to heat because right now the set point is 75. So it should switch over to heat and we should fire up the heating. Another issue I'm having right now, I noticed, is that there's no humidity reading. So I'm going to have to look at that to see why we're not getting a space humidity reading. So let's give us a moment for it to catch up and let's see if we actually do switch over into heating mode. There we go. Our heat went to 100%. And if you look, you can see the flame graphic in the exchanger and it's red. So right now it is saying it's in heat and it's actually heating. Now I'm going to go up on the roof and make sure that the furnace is actually on and that we're not just running a compressor. But before I go up, this is in the template here. You can see it does say 1-stage DX, modulating economizer, and then it says preheat 1-stage gas, and then reheat type hot gas bypass, which is for the dehumidification. So I'm going to go back up there and take a look. And here's another tip. If you do any changes to any boards or anything, you should always go into devices, which is in the tree here. Select a unit you're working on, come to actions, and do refresh equipment. What that's going to do is the system's going to pull that unit, and if there's any changes made or anything in the configuration, it's going to update this template. Since it's up here, it says that this device was successfully replaced, and you can see it's got it. If it failed, it would be down here, but it looks good. So we know that this is updated to everything that we have in the unit, and if we go look at applications to see if anything changed down here, everything looks good. Okay, let's go up to the unit. And there we go. She's running in heat. Kind of hard to hear, but it is running. So earlier I showed you this and I said foreshadowing, and it turns out the humidity sensor was not reading because this plug here was 1 pin over to the left. It actually needed to go 1 more pin to the right. That's why it's a bad idea to have this 2-pin plug on such a large pin out on the board. So that's why I said foreshadowing, and I lost the footage, so I'm doing this voiceover. There we go, humidity's reading. I'm Professor Butler, 20-year HVAC service technician. If you learned something today or you have any other questions about Trane, RTRMs, or anything else, leave me a comment down below. I'd appreciate a few shares. Send it to somebody who you know works on Trane units a lot. Thanks for watching. America.